How does one joke in a group chat turn into legal papers dropped in front of my whole family? Why did my husband wait in silence, gather proof, and then answer my walking credit card comment with a calm, public divorce filing? Can I still call him the villain when the judge signs orders and everyone is staring at me? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Isolde Merren, and I do not think I am a bad wife. People love to say that now, but they were not there when I was the one holding everything together. I am 31, I work the front desk at a dental clinic, I keep the house clean, I make sure our daughter has her lunchbox and library books. Ethan makes money. That is what he does. He works in IT, some project thing I never remember. He sits in meetings and presses buttons on a laptop and somehow gets a big salary. It has always been clear to me who is the face of this family and who is the wallet. We have this group chat called Friends and Partners. It started as a simple thing. My best friend Nora, her boyfriend, another couple we know, plus me and Ethan. Over time, more people joined. My sister for a while, my mom when she wanted to see photos, some of Ethan's family members like his sister Shelby. It became the place where we posted everything, memes, dinner plans, little complaints. I liked it because people laughed at my jokes. When I made fun of Ethan, they laughed even harder. That told me something important. I was not the only one who saw what he was like. The week it all started, Ethan had done one of his budget reviews. That is what he called it, like we were a company. He sat at the small kitchen table with his laptop and asked about my spending. He said he needed to know why the credit card bill was higher this month. He asked about drinks with Nora, new shoes, a hair appointment. He did not yell, but his questions felt like little knives. I told him I was tired of feeling like a child, asking her father for pocket money. He did not get it. He never gets it. When Nora asked in the group chat what we were doing Friday night, I said Ethan wanted to review expenses again, and I added a rolling eyes emoji. People laughed. Nora wrote that I should just say I am not a spreadsheet. Someone else sent a meme about husbands holding their wallets like they hold their feelings. My phone buzzed over and over as they reacted. It felt good. It felt like proof that I was normal and he was the strange one. By Friday, I was done with numbers and his quiet sighs. Nora said I should come out to a wine bar with her and some people from work. I told Ethan it was girls' night and that it was important for my mental health. He said he thought we were going to talk about the bills. I told him we could talk later and that I was tired of every serious conversation being about money. He looked at me for a long time. He asked if I understood that he was worried about our future, about Hannah's school, about savings. I said if he was so worried, he should just work more, not police my glass of wine. The bar was busy and warm and loud. Lights hung in little strings across the ceiling. Music played, but not so loud that we couldn't talk. Nora ordered the first bottle of wine and posted a picture of our glasses in the group chat. She added a caption about Mom's night out, finally off the clock. While the others talked, I opened a picture Ethan had sent me earlier in the week. A screenshot of our monthly spending with red numbers next to my name. It made my chest feel tight. I wanted to turn that tightness into something else. I dropped the screenshot into the group chat and typed that this was how romance looked in my house. People reacted right away. Laughing emojis, wow emojis. Someone wrote that Ethan was such a dad. They meant it as an insult. I liked that. I typed that Ethan was basically a walking credit card that lives in my house. I added a little shrug emoji like it was just the truth. Nora practically screamed when she saw it, then leaned across the table and said I was savage. She told me I should print it and put it on our fridge. More messages kept coming. Somebody wrote that at least my card worked. Another said I should be careful. or the card might cancel itself. That one annoyed me. Ethan was not going to cancel anything. He needed me as much as I needed him. I sent another message, that he would never leave because he would fall apart without me. My fingers moved fast, light from the phone shining on my wine glass. I felt clever and sharp. I did not even think about who was actually in the chat. Then I saw Ethan's little profile picture at the top of the screen. It was still there, a small circle with his face. I stared at it for a second, and my stomach dropped for half a heartbeat. I had this quick thought. Did he just read that? My thumb hovered over the screen. There was no reply from him, no dots, no message, nothing. I told myself he was not looking. He never checked the chat when he was working. Anyway, if he did see it, it was just a joke. Couples joke. People talk. If he chose to be sensitive, that was not my fault. While Nora paid the bill, my phone buzzed again. I saw a list of names in the group chat, and Ethan's name blinked, then disappeared. A small system note showed that he had left the conversation. Nora saw my face and asked what happened. I said he was being dramatic and logged out to punish me. I laughed and said he could not take a joke. I typed, "Someone is moody" in the chat and added another laughing emoji. People reacted with more laughter. My mom sent a sticker of a woman rolling her eyes at a man with a wallet. That made me feel safe again. When I got home, the apartment was quiet. The lights in the living room were off except for the small lamp near the couch. Ethan was sitting there with his laptop closed, hands on his knees. Hannah was already asleep. I smelled toothpaste and the detergent from the laundry basket by the hall. I put my bag down and kicked off my shoes. I said the night was fun and that Nora sent her love. He asked how much the bottle cost. I said not much, and that it was rude to make the first question about money. He asked, very calm, if I meant what I wrote in the group chat. He said he had seen the "walking credit card" comment. He said it hurt. I felt heat rise in my neck. Instead of saying sorry, I asked why he was going through my messages. He said the chat was for both of us. I told him it was obviously sarcasm, and that everyone knew couples talked like that. I said if he didn't want to be seen as only a credit card, maybe he should act like more than a spreadsheet. His jaw tightened, but he did not raise his voice. That annoyed me more than shouting would have. He said he did not like being talked about that way in front of our families. I told him my mother understood and that maybe his family was too stiff. I said Shelby always acted like I was the problem and that she needed to mind her own business. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was a private message from Shelby asking if he was okay. I showed it to him and said, "See, even your sister thinks you're fragile about this." He shook his head, stood up and said we would talk later. He went to the little guest room we used as a study. I stayed in the kitchen, scrolling the chat, reading the jokes again. The messages made me feel right. They were proof that other people agreed with me. I opened our shared family app to check the calendar for Hannah's school trip. A new event sat there, bright and out of place. Downtown 11:30, personal, on the coming Tuesday, created by Ethan's account. I frowned at it, then shrugged. If he wanted to be mysterious, fine. I told myself he was just going to some boring work thing and that he would get over his feelings sooner or later. On Monday morning, I woke up before my alarm. The apartment felt heavy and still. Ethan had already left for work. His side of the bed was cold. That was new. Usually he moves slow in the mornings, making coffee, asking if I needed a ride. That day there was just a note on the counter that said he had an early meeting. No heart, no smiley face, nothing. It annoyed me. If he wanted me to feel guilty, he could at least say it. At the clinic, I sat behind the front desk and watched people come in with broken teeth and old fillings. The phone rang. I smiled. I clicked through charts. My mind was not on the patients. I kept thinking about Ethan leaving the group chat like a moody teenager. When Nora showed up at the desk with her coffee, I told her he was still sulking. I said he had looked at me like I had stabbed him when it was just a joke. She rolled her eyes and said, Men like him loved to play the victim when someone told the truth. In the break room, I pulled out my phone and opened the group chat. The walking credit card line was still there, with all the laughing reactions. It felt like a trophy. I told my coworkers that Ethan had made another spreadsheet for our spending, and they groaned in sympathy. One of the hygienists said he sounded controlling. I liked that word. It made me feel like I had a serious complaint, not just some whining about budgets. I started using it in my head over and over. Controlling, controlling, controlling. Later that day, Marco came by the clinic. He was the gym rep who handled some wellness deal with our dentist. He was tall, casual, with a bright smile that made people relax. I liked the way he leaned on the counter instead of standing stiff like Ethan did. He asked how our weekend had been. I told him my husband had done a performance review of my spending, and the whole room laughed. I said he treated me like a company expense. Marco raised his eyebrows and said that sounded intense. I told him I called Ethan a walking credit card, and the group chat went crazy. He laughed too. That laugh warmed me more than it should have. When the clinic was quiet, I checked our banking app. Ethan had already paid the rent, the utilities, the daycare fee. Everything was on time, like always. Still, the numbers made me feel trapped. I wanted to buy a new dress I had seen online. I told myself I deserved it after such a stressful weekend. I ordered it with our main card and told myself I would deal with Ethan's questions later. If he complained, I could say I needed to feel pretty so I could represent him well. On Wednesday, he asked me over dinner about the dress when he saw the transaction. He did not shout. He never shouted. He just asked if I really needed it since I had just bought shoes last week. I told him that if he wanted a wife that looked good on his arm, this was part of the cost. I said he should see it as investing in our image. When he frowned, I accused him of wanting me to look cheap and tired. That shut him up quickly. I knew how to use that line. No man wants to be the one who keeps his wife down. The tension grew over the next few days. He spent more evenings in the guest room with the door half closed. Sometimes I heard the low sound of his voice on calls. Sometimes there was just the click of keys and the soft whir of the printer. Once, when I put Hannah to bed and walked past the door, I heard him say something about assets and documentation. The words sounded cold. I waited, listening, but he must have heard the floor creak because the room went quiet. I told myself he was probably just talking about some work project. That Friday was my father's birthday. We all went to a busy family restaurant with long tables and paper menus. My parents, my sister, Ethan's mother Talia, his sister Shelby, plus us and Hannah. The place was loud with kids and plates and music. I liked that kind of noise. It made it easier to say risky things. Everyone ordered food, drinks, cake. When the bill came, my father reached for his wallet, but I stopped him and said Ethan would get it. I said it loud, on purpose. People laughed. My mother said, of course Ethan would pay. He was the responsible one. I tossed my hair and told the table Ethan loved being a walking credit card. I said it gave him a reason to feel important. Talia stiffened but stayed quiet. Shelby's jaw clenched. Gareth laughed and said, well, somebody has to pay, may as well be the man. He slapped Ethan on the back and called him Mr. Provider. Hannah did not understand what we were really saying. She just clapped when the cake came. Ethan looked at me across the table. He did not smile. He took out his card and handed it to the waiter without a word. I felt a flash of victory and something like fear at the same time. It was like pushing someone and seeing that they do not move at all. On the drive home, he finally spoke. He said he did not like being called a walking credit card in front of our families. He said it made him feel small and used. I said he was making it bigger than it was, and that everyone knew it was a joke. I told him my mother agreed with me, and that maybe his family was too stiff to handle normal humor. He asked if I really thought of him that way. I answered that I thought of him as the financial part of the team, and that there was nothing wrong with that. I said respect followed results, and he had results with money, so he should be proud. He said respect was not the same as access to his debit card. I said if he took away my access, people would think he was abusing me. He went very quiet after that and kept his eyes on the road. Over the weekend, he checked our statements again. I noticed because he printed something and left it face down on the table when Hannah called him. I flipped it over. It was a list of transactions with little marks next to them, mostly mine. I felt my chest tighten again. When he came back in, I tossed the paper back and said it was creepy that he was tracking me like that. He said it was his right to know where the money went. I told him if he wanted to audit every receipt like a detective, maybe he should pay me a salary and call it a job. He stared at me for a long moment and then said he needed to think. That night, he moved his pillow to the guest room. He said it was so I could have more space. I told him he was being dramatic. In truth, the empty side of the bed felt strange and cold. But I told myself this was what men do when they are guilty. They distance themselves so they can blame you later. And I decided firmly that whatever he was planning with his printed lists and quiet calls, I would not be the one who looked weak. By the next week, things between Ethan and me had settled into a strange calm. He still moved around the apartment like a ghost. He woke up early, left before I was fully dressed, came home after Hannah was already in pajamas. He checked her homework, read her a story, then disappeared into the guest room with his laptop. We did not fight. We also did not touch. I told myself this meant I was free. If he wanted to act like a machine, I did not have to feel guilty about needing warmth somewhere else. Nora texted me on Wednesday about a rooftop bar opening. She said some people from her work were going, and Marco would be there too. She sent a photo of the view from the bar's Instagram page. City lights, hanging plants, fancy cocktails. I was tired of feeling like a boring married woman with a man who only cared about numbers. I wanted to be seen again. I told Ethan there was another girls' night. I said it was important to have time away from home. He asked what time I would be back. I told him I did not know, maybe midnight. He asked if we could talk about the budget this weekend. I said I did not want our whole marriage to be about a budget. I added that if he had something else to offer, maybe I would want to stay home more. His mouth tightened, but he just nodded. He said he would be here with Hannah. At the rooftop bar, music thumped and the air smelled like citrus and perfume. Nora waved from a table near the railing. Marco sat with her, in a soft shirt and dark jeans, looking relaxed in a way Ethan never did. When I walked over, Marco stood and said I looked amazing. He did not say it like a duty, he said it like a discovery. I felt a warm rush in my chest. We ordered a round of drinks, then another. Nora told the table about my walking credit card line from the chat. Everyone laughed. Someone asked if Ethan was still sulking. I said he was sleeping in the guest room like some Saint Martyrs himself. I said he had turned himself into an accountant, not a husband. Marco raised his glass and said, I deserved someone who saw me as more than a number on a spreadsheet. My skin buzzed at that. I used Ethan's card to pay the tab. It felt fitting. If he wanted to be the financial arm of this marriage, then he should do his job. I told myself I was investing in my happiness, which would make me a better wife and mother. In my head, it almost sounded noble. Later, when the group moved inside to dance, Marco and I stayed near the railing. The wind ruffled my hair. He asked if Ethan knew I was out this late. I said Ethan only knew how to count hours, not enjoy them. I told Marco we shared a child, but not a life. I said I had tried for years to get Ethan to be fun and open, but he only cared about bills. Marco shook his head and said he did not know how men could waste a woman like me. I let myself lean a little closer. My phone buzzed in my hand. In the friends and partners chat, Nora had posted a blurry photo of the bar. Someone wrote that I was living my best life. I added a comment. Meanwhile, my walking credit card is probably updating Excel. There were more laughing emojis. No reply from Ethan. His name was still not in the chat, of course. I told myself that if he refused to be part of the story, that was his choice. When the bar closed, Marco offered to walk me down to the street. Nora was busy flirting with a bartender, so I said yes. In the elevator, he asked if my husband was the jealous type. I laughed and said Ethan was the spreadsheet type, which was worse. I said he would only be jealous of the price of the taxi. Marco smiled and said I deserved someone who thought I was priceless. The line was cheesy, but I wanted to hear it. When we reached the lobby, he touched my arm and asked if I wanted to grab a late-night snack near his gym. I said I should go home, but my feet did not move. We ended up in the bright, echoing lobby of his gym, sipping smoothies at midnight. I told Ethan, by text, that we had gone to a late diner. He asked if I was safe. I said yes, and added that he could relax because I was not spending his precious money. In truth, I used his card again. Over the next few weeks, it became a pattern. I said I was staying late at the clinic for paperwork or end-of-month reports. Sometimes that was half true. I did stay late for a bit. Then I walked next door to the gym and met Marco in the lobby. We sat on the soft chairs under bright lights, laughing about small things. Once, when a coworker walked by, I said Marco was helping me plan a wellness challenge for patients. It sounded professional. It sounded right. Ethan started asking questions. Not loud, not cruel, just short, careful ones. He asked why the rideshare receipts showed pickups near the gym and drops at certain hotels, on nights when I said I was at Nora's. I told him the app messed up locations. I said he was being paranoid. I asked if he really wanted to become the kind of man who tracked his wife like a criminal. He backed off. He always backed off when I hinted he could look abusive. He also started changing small things. I noticed that our joint card limit was lower. I had a transaction declined for some online shoes, and I saw a message about insufficient available funds. When I checked the app, I saw his salary was now split between 2 accounts. The joint one still paid rent and bills, but the extra money seemed to go somewhere else. I told myself this was controlling. I told Nora he was freezing me out. She said it sounded like financial abuse. I liked that phrase. It made him the villain. One night, after I came home from what I told him was a late staff meeting, I passed the guest room and saw the door slightly open. The glow from his laptop lit the small desk. On the screen, a cloud storage page was open. At the top were 2 folders, labeled Archive A and Archive B. Under them, neat rows of files with dates. Some of the dates matched my girls' nights, our fights about money, and the day he left the group chat. Little green check marks showed everything was synced. My first thought was that he was being dramatic, saving our whole life like a TV character. Then, I saw one file name that made my stomach twist. Card statement, June unedited.pdf. Another file had the word chat in it. I pushed the door a little more. The chair creaked and Ethan turned. He closed the laptop in one quick motion. He asked if I needed something. I said I was just checking on him, since he spent so much time hiding in here. He said he was working on some things, and that it was private. I laughed and said we were married. Nothing was private. He looked at me, tired, and said, sometimes privacy was the only thing left when respect was gone. That line annoyed me more than any spreadsheet. Back in the hallway, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Marco. He wrote that next time we should book a room closer to my place so I didn't have such a long ride home. He added a winking emoji. I stared at the message, then at the closed guest room door, and told myself Ethan had pushed me into this by acting like a human calculator instead of a husband. The next morning felt like living in 2 different houses at once. In the kitchen, Ethan moved around quietly, making Hannah's breakfast, packing her school snack. In the hallway, his pillow and blanket were still on the guest room bed. I watched him spread peanut butter on bread like it was any normal day. He asked if I wanted coffee. I said I did, but I didn't say thank you. I did not want him to think small kindness erased everything. On the walk to the playground near the school, Hannah skipped between us, holding both our hands. She told Ethan about a picture she drew in art class. He smiled and listened. I watched him and thought how strange it was that he could be good with her and still be so cold with me. When we reached the gate, the other parents were already there, chatting in little groups. I peeled away from Ethan and joined a circle of mums by the swings. One of them asked where Ethan was, and I nodded over my shoulder. He stood off to the side, looking at his phone, shoulders slightly hunched. I said he was checking if the cost of crayons fit the budget. They laughed. The joke landed easy. That gave me courage. I told them, in a light voice, that he had tightened the cards and that a few of my purchases had been declined. I said it like I was amused, but I watched their faces. One mum frowned and asked if he was cutting me off from money as a punishment. I shrugged and said he had always been a bit controlling, but lately it felt more serious. I said he moved into the guest room after I called him a walking credit card as a joke. Their eyes widened. The word controlling floated in the air like a new toy. They asked if he gave me an allowance or if I had my own money. I told them my salary mostly went to small things and that the big bills came from his account. I made it sound like he held the power and I was just allowed to touch it. I left out all the times I used his card for drinks, clothes, rides to Marco. I said, very carefully, that sometimes it felt like financial abuse. One mum sucked in a breath. Another nodded slowly and said that wasn't okay. I liked the way they said it. It wrapped around me like a blanket. Across the playground, Ethan looked up and saw me talking. Our eyes met. For a second, I wondered if he could hear any of it. I turned away and laughed louder, making sure the mums heard. Hannah ran toward him, backpack bouncing, and he knelt to tie her shoelace. For a moment, they looked like a perfect little picture. I reminded myself that pictures could be fake. Later that week, I went to the supermarket after work. It was busy, with people rushing down aisles, kids whining for candy. I filled the cart with normal things: pasta, milk, cereal, some snacks for Hannah, and a bottle of nicer wine for me and Nora. At the checkout, the line was long and my feet hurt. When the cashier finally scanned everything and I tapped the joint card, the little screen beeped and flashed red. "Transaction declined," it said. The cashier tried again. Same beep, same message. People behind me sighed. I felt heat rush to my face. I knew there was money. Rent was paid. Bills were fine. This was him. I could see it, him moving numbers around in his guest room, deciding how much I could spend without talking to me. I pulled out my phone and called him, putting it on speaker so everyone could hear. He picked up after a few rings and asked if everything was okay. I said, loud enough for the cashier and the people in line, that our card had just been declined for normal groceries. I said I hoped he hadn't decided to freeze the account again without telling me. The word "again" was a small lie, but it sounded good. He said, calm, that there were new limits and that I could use my own card and he would sort it out later. I told him I didn't have enough on my card right now and that he had known that. My voice shook, part anger, part performance. I said I guessed the child could just go without dinner if the man in charge of our funds wanted to make a point. The woman behind me cleared her throat, uncomfortable. The cashier looked at me with sympathy. On the phone, Ethan went quiet for a second, then told the cashier he would pay over the phone with a different card. He asked to speak to the manager. I stared at the line of people watching me, and I knew what they were thinking, that he was unkind, that he was using money as a weapon. That was fine with me. When I got home, I slammed the bags on the counter. He followed me into the kitchen and said I didn't have to speak to him like that in public. I said I wouldn't have to if he didn't ambush me with declined cards. He explained, again in that slow, careful voice, that he had moved some of his pay into a separate account on advice so we would have structure. He said the joint account still covered essentials. I asked if he thought food for his wife was not essential. He said it was about stopping the extra spending until we talked. I said if he wanted to stop extra spending, he should stop drinking coffee and breathing. He rubbed his forehead and said we could sit down with numbers this weekend. I said I did not want my marriage to be a quarterly meeting. I told him his behavior was starting to look abusive and that people had seen it. I did not say which people. I wanted him to imagine whispers. That night, after Hannah fell asleep, I went out on the small balcony with my mother, who had come by to drop off some books. We each had a glass of wine. The city lights flickered, and the air was cool. I told her about the supermarket. I said Ethan had let the card fail on purpose, and that I had stood there like some beggar. I said he had moved money away, and was living in another room, and calling that structure. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. She said it reminded her of Ethan's father, who always watched every coin. She said she had worried when I married into their family that money would always come first. I leaned into that. I said I was scared he would hide everything and leave me with nothing. I did not say that I had my own account with side money, and that Marco sometimes paid for things too. I told my mother I needed to protect myself, maybe even think about leaving before he did something worse. She said if I felt unsafe, I should consider all options. The word unsafe burned pleasantly in my chest. Inside, I could hear the faint clack of keys from the guest room. At one point, the sound stopped, and the apartment went quiet. Then I heard his voice, low and serious, through the half-open door. I moved closer and stood just outside, hidden by the wall. He was on a video call with a woman in a blazer. I could see the blue light on his face. He said he wanted to understand his rights if the marriage ended, and what he needed to do for Hannah. The woman said something about documenting patterns, about temporary orders, and best interests of the child. My stomach tightened. I barely understood the terms, but they sounded official, heavy. He must have heard me breathe, because he spun in his chair and shut the laptop in one quick move. I walked in slowly and asked who he had been talking to. He said it was just work. I said I had heard temporary orders, and last time I checked, his job was not family court. He looked at me steadily and said sometimes he needed professional advice outside the marriage. I laughed and told him if he was paying some stranger to tell him to stop being cheap, that was his choice. I said he was throwing away money we supposedly didn't have, which proved he didn't care about the budget as much as he pretended. He just watched me, face calm, and said he would make sure Hannah was okay no matter what. That shook me more than I wanted to admit. Later, while brushing my teeth, I opened our banking app again. A new transfer record showed a large sum moved from the joint account to one labelled only with his name. Bills were still set to auto-pay, but the padding was gone. I stared at the numbers until my reflection blurred. In my head, I repeated the words I had used with the mums: controlling, financial abuse, unsafe. As long as I believed them, I did not have to ask whether any of this was the result of my own choices. By the time the next week started, I felt like I was walking on a line I had drawn myself. On one side was Ethan and the life I already had: the apartment, the routines, the school emails, the steady paychecks. On the other side was this idea of freedom that I kept feeding with messages from Marco and late nights out. I told myself I could balance both if Ethan would just stop pushing me with his spreadsheets and quiet judgments. On Monday evening, Ethan called me into the guest room. He spoke from the doorway like it wasn't really his bedroom, just a neutral space. His laptop was closed, but a neat stack of printed papers sat on the desk. My name was on the top page in small type from the bank. I knew it before I saw the logo. He said he wanted to go over some things honestly. I said we had already talked the money to death. He said this wasn't only about money. He picked up the stack and turned a few pages around so I could see. Hotel names, dates, ride app charges, all lined up in columns, with small notes in the margins in his handwriting. Some of the dates were nights I had told him I was with Nora or at work late. My first reaction was anger that he had gone this far without telling me. I did not look at the pages long enough to let the guilt land. I grabbed them and flipped faster, just enough to see the pattern. Then I tossed them back on the desk. I asked if he had become a private detective, and if he had fun spying on his wife. He said he hadn't spied. He had just followed the payments we both shared. He added that our joint card should not be paying for hotel rooms near Marco's gym. The way he said Marco's name, calm and quiet, made me feel naked. I said he had no proof of anything, that he was inventing stories from data because he liked numbers more than people. I told him I had simply needed space, that sometimes I booked a room to think, to get away from all the pressure he put on me at home. Even to my ears it sounded thin, so I grabbed the next tool I always used. I cried. Tears came faster than I expected. I told him he had pushed me away with his coldness, with his constant focus on budgets and reports. I said if I had done anything wrong, it was because I was lonely and desperate, not because I didn't love him. I called it a small emotional mistake, not an affair. I said I just wanted to feel wanted. I told him he had not even noticed when I got my hair done last month. His face tightened at that, and I knew I had hit something. He asked, very quietly, if there had been anything physical between me and Marco. I looked right at him and said no. I said I would never risk our family like that. I said these hotel visits had been me, alone, needing time to breathe. I called him paranoid. I said he was twisting random receipts into a story he wanted to believe so he wouldn't have to look at his own failures as a husband. He stared at me a long time, then looked down at the papers, like he was testing my words against ink. He said he had also seen my messages, the ones where I called him a walking credit card, where I joked about manifesting a soft exit. He said it hurt to see me planning a life without him, while still using his name to pay for everything. I said everyone joked like that, and that if he chose to read it seriously, that was on him. I accused him of reading private chats he had no right to. He reminded me that it was our shared group. I said that didn't matter. The point was, he had violated my trust. Later that afternoon, I met Nora at a small coffee shop near downtown. My hand still shook a little as I stirred sugar into my drink, but I turned that into performance. I told her Ethan had pulled out what I called a dossier on me, like I was some criminal, and waved bank statements in my face. I used the word interrogation. I said he kept asking where I had been, who I was with, what I did. I did not mention the hotel names or Marco. Nora's eyes went wide. She said that sounded like emotional abuse, maybe even stalking. I said I felt like a prisoner in my own marriage, watched and tested. I said I had told him I might need to leave if he did not stop. I liked the way Nora's anger rose on my behalf. It made me feel righteous. She asked about Marco. I shrugged and said he was just a friend who reminded me I was more than a bill to be paid. I said I hadn't done anything serious, just talked and flirted, and that even that was only because Ethan had made me feel invisible. I repeated that phrase, invisible, like a shield around me. That weekend, Ethan asked for a dinner with both our families. He said he wanted everyone to be on the same page. I agreed, because I thought I could control the story better with an audience that already liked me. We went back to the same family-style restaurant we had used for my father's birthday. Long tables, kids coloring on paper menus, the smell of fried food and sauce in the air. My parents came first, then Ethan's mother, Talia, and his sister Shelby. Hannah sat between the grandmothers, busy with crayons. I watched Ethan the whole time. He looked tired but not broken. That bothered me. Broken would have been easier to handle. Food came, drinks came. Conversations flowed in small streams. Then I decided to start. I put my fork down and said I needed to share something important. I said our marriage had been under a lot of strain because Ethan was too focused on money and numbers. I said he had started monitoring my spending in a way that felt controlling. I dropped the phrase, financial abuse, carefully, like a seed. My mother gasped and turned to him. My father frowned and asked if that was true. Ethan opened his mouth, but I rushed on. I said I had made mistakes too, that I had crossed lines emotionally, with someone who gave me attention when I felt unseen. I kept my voice soft and wounded. I said I had told Ethan I was sorry for that, but instead of hearing me, he turned our home into a place of audits and accusations. Milena reached for my hand and said anyone could slip when they felt starved of love. My father nodded, saying marriage was hard and men had to step up emotionally, not just financially. Talia looked straight at Ethan and asked if he really had moved into another room instead of talking to me. Shelby sat still, watching me with sharp eyes. Ethan stayed quiet until my parents finished. Then he said he did not want to argue in front of everyone, but he also would not accept being called abusive. He said he had seen proof that my emotional mistake involved hotel rooms and lies about where I was. He did not raise his voice, he just said the words and let them land. The table went very still. I laughed, a little high, and said he was twisting facts again. I told my parents he was taking random receipts and trying to make it look like I had done something terrible, when really, I had just needed space. I called him paranoid in front of everyone, said he was trying to make me look crazy so he could feel justified. My mother shook her head at him and said it sounded like he was punishing me instead of owning his part. My father muttered about men who thought money solved everything. Talia's mouth was a thin line. Shelby finally spoke and said calmly that Ethan had been more patient than most men she knew. She said she had seen some of the messages too, and that the story was not as simple as I was presenting it. My stomach lurched. I snapped at her, said she always took her brother's side, that she had never liked me. She responded that she wanted the truth for Hannah's sake. The mention of Hannah's name made my skin crawl. I did not like how easily they brought her into it. Ethan put his hands flat on the table and said he did not want to keep fighting like this. He looked at me, not angry, not pleading, just steady. He said he had heard my version many times and that tonight everyone had heard it too. Then he said he would not debate anymore. He said he would handle everything properly from now on. I asked what that meant. He said I would get an email soon with details for a meeting on Friday near the courthouse. He added that it was time to get help from people whose job it was to be fair. His voice was calm, in a way I had never heard before, and that calm felt sharper than any shout. On Friday, I walked into the courthouse lobby in my best dress, telling myself this was just a mediation. The air smelled like coffee and disinfectant. People moved around with folders and tired faces. My parents were already there. Talia and Shelby too. Nora hovered near the benches, eyes big. Ethan stood beside a woman in a navy suit holding a thick folder. I walked up and said this was extreme for a budget problem. He said this wasn't about the budget anymore. The woman introduced herself as his attorney and asked if I was Isolde Merren. When I said yes, she handed me an envelope in front of everyone. I opened it and saw the heading: Petition for Dissolution of Marriage with Temporary Orders. My heart kicked. There was a section about custody, a schedule, rules about who picked up Hannah when. Another section about finances, separate accounts, frozen joint cards except for basic bills. It said he would keep paying the rent, health insurance, school costs. Then I turned a page and saw screenshots, my walking credit card line, my jokes, my memes. The label said Exhibit C, group chat messages. I looked up. Ethan was watching me, calm, as the automatic doors opened behind him and filled the lobby with bright, cold air.